Mm-mm. Hello, hello. Okay. We'll just wait a few minutes for people to arrive. Okay, well, welcome everybody to Cannabis Consulting for Health Professionals and our endocannabinoid system. So, on this week's webinar, we are going to be talking about the Alignable Heart of Healing group. And the reason why I call it the Heart of Healing group is because our endocannabinoid system is truly at the heart of our body's ability to heal itself, especially on a holistic level. So we're going to be talking primarily about this system, about our endocannabinoid system, and what happens when we have a deficiency in that system, when we overstimulate the system, so that if you're involved in participating in the health of your patients or clients, you can tap into this knowledge and really help them to achieve the optimal level of wellness by taking the endocannabinoid system into consideration, as well as knowing how to support it and make it as functional as possible. So, so the reason why I called it the Heart of Healing group is, as I said, the endocannabinoid system, which I will call the ECS moving forward, it's integral to our body's ability to heal. And we can do things that will either strengthen or diminish our endocannabinoid tone. And many healthcare practitioners don't know how to tap into or optimize their patients' healing. So, hopefully, by discussing this symptom, that will improve. And this system was discovered in the 1990s, but it was only taught in select medical and nursing schools due to pharmaceutical industry's influence on the nursing schools and the medical schools. Hello, Sherry. Thank you for joining. I'm just getting started.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, this is being recorded, and so the people who can't attend will be able to watch it later. So I appreciate you being here for this. And if you have any questions in the process, feel free to interrupt and we'll take questions as they come up. Okay, so we were talking about why I'm calling this the Heart of Healing group in the Alignable platform. And the reason is because the endocannabinoid system really is integral to our body's ability to heal itself. And we can do things to strengthen that system and also to diminish that endocannabinoid tone. And most healthcare practitioners don't know how to do that. They don't know how to tap into and optimize their patient's healing by bringing the endocannabinoid system into their healing processes. So this is a system that was discovered back in the 1990s, but it is, even today, it's only taught in select medical and nursing schools. And that's primarily due to the pharmaceutical industry's influence, their financial influence in funding laboratories and medical schools, et cetera. And cannabis is considered a threat to the pharmaceutical industry. So anyway, it's my opinion that every healer should know about our endocannabinoid system and how to support its optimal tone. And that is what this group and these educational seminars are for. So, welcome. So, a little bit about myself. I got into cannabis nursing about 8 years ago because as of 8 years ago, became a cannabis patient. So I have a progressive neurological movement disorder called essential tremor. And it basically manifests when I have too many electrical impulses going off in my brain, which cause my body to shake. And the typical Western medicine approach is to treat people with essential tremor using anticonvulsants. And my very first anticonvulsant was a barbiturate anticonvulsant, and it really I went from being on no pharmaceuticals to probably some of the strongest um, brain altering medications that you can be on, and they were hideous. So, anyway, long story short, I had to find another solution. So, I started doing research. Cannabis was not on my radar screen whatsoever. And I was amazed by the amount of medical research that supported the use of cannabis for a variety of medical conditions. And, it's funny, a lot of people think, oh, cannabis is just snake oil because it works for so many different conditions that are very dissimilar. Like it's effective in pediatric um, seizure disorders. It's effective in Alzheimer's disease. It's effective in autoimmune disease, in cancer, etc. So people say, how can one plant be so applicable and so helpful to all these different health conditions? And the reason why is because it integrates with our endocannabinoid system. So let me move on to that. So our endocannabinoid system, um, its job is to maintain homeostasis. So it's involved in just about every bodily function there is, from pain, movement, emotion, digestion, your skin health, and your bone health. And it really is at the center of our body's ability to heal itself. And a well functioning endocannabinoid system is achieved through a balanced endocannabinoid tone, and it is vital for overall health. And moving forward, we're going to be talking quite a bit about a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. So, this is the first study on today's webinar. This was a study that really was groundbreaking in terms of identifying that our endocannabinoid system may be responsible for a lot of diseases that are treatment resistant. They have no definitive like labs that say, okay, yes, your lab results show that you have this disorder. It's usually conditions of elimination. So, and these are typically very difficult to treat effectively. So, these include subjective pain syndrome, such as migraine, fibromyalgia, and irritable bowel symptoms. And these, like I said, they lack objective signs and are resistant to conventional treatments, and they often overlap in affected populations, and sufferers may face and often do face the stigma of being psychosomatic. And the concept of a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency has been proposed as a possible explanation for these conditions. And I'll tell you why this came about. So, the hypothesis suggests that all humans have an underlying endocannabinoid tone, which reflects the level of our own endocannabinoids, the cannabinoids that we produce in our body, and including their production, their metabolism, and also the state of the receptors that they interact with. So, in certain conditions, this endocannabinoid tone may become deficient, leading to pathophysiological syndromes. So it was initially proposed in 2001, and the theory was based on genetic overlap, on symptom patterns related to the endocannabinoid system, and the beneficial effects of taking in exogenous or cannabinoids from outside of our body, primarily phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant, but they have done studies using synthetic cannabinoids like synthetic THC. But anyway, so they saw the beneficial effects of using these exogenous cannabinoids to treat the symptoms. However, at that time, objective evidence and formal clinical trial data were lacking. More recently, there have been statistically significant differences in the cerebral spinal fluid of anandamide levels observed in people who had migraines. And advanced imaging studies have indicated that the endocannabinoid system hypofunction, meaning it's not functioning, at optimal levels, was there in post-traumatic stress disorder. So these findings have provided a much stronger basis for the theory of an endocannabinoid deficiency leading to these different syndromes. And clinical data has also emerged showing a decrease in pain, improved sleep, and other benefits from cannabinoid treatment and lifestyle approaches that affect the tone of our endocannabinoid system. So the theory of an endocannabinoid, of a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency suggests that certain brain disorders may be associated with the deficiency in endocannabinoid levels, similar to how other brain disorders are linked to deficiencies in specific neurotransmitters. For example, Parkinson's is coupled with a deficiency in dopamine, which is another neurotransmitter. And our endocannabinoid system is the largest neurotransmitter system in our bodies. So, So all humans have this underlying endocannabinoid tone that reflects the level of specific endocannabinoids, and our endocannabinoids are called anandamide and 2-AG, and there are a couple other ones, but these two are the primary ones. Their production, their breakdown by the enzymes, and the density of the cannabinoid receptors in the brain, or the CB1 receptors. And a decrease in endocannabinoid function could lead to lower pain thresholds, so you're much more sensitive to pain, disruptions in digestion, so irritable bowel syndrome, mood and sleep, and as the endocannabinoid system is involved in various physiological processes. So, clinical endocannabinoid deficiency may be caused by genetic, congenital, or acquired factors, resulting in characteristic pathophysiological syndromes with specific conditions, such as the three that we have been talking about: your migraine, irritable bowel, and fibromyalgia. And there are other conditions, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the strongest evidence for a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency is found in these three conditions. And these conditions share common trends. For example, they're diagnosed based on subjective criteria and a lack of characteristic tissue pathology or easily accessible laboratory findings. You're not going to, see an endocannabinoid deficiency or any kind of indicator on a lab result or on imaging that says, yes, you have migraines. It's a matter of eliminating everything else. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. Um, and they require a lot of negative results on diagnostic tests. Anxiety and depression are often present, and that leads to a debate on whether they are the cause or the consequence of these conditions. And there is also frequently comorbidity, where a significant number of patients experience more than one of these syndromes. And there is a common risk for individuals to develop one or more of these symptoms or these syndromes during their lifetime. So, overall, the theory of a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency provides a potential explanation for the overlapping symptomatology and treatment resistance observed in migraines, irritable bowel, and fibromyalgia, which basically suggests that there's a deficiency in the endocannabinoid system. So, and it not only the clinical endocannabinoid deficiency doesn't only just encompass those three conditions. They are now looking into it for failure to thrive, for cystic fibrosis, for phantom limb pain, infantile colic, glaucoma, dysmenorrhea, hyperemesis gravidarum, unexplained and repetitive miscarriages, post traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disease, and many others. So, despite being distinct conditions, they share the commonality of being difficult to treat and having pathophysiological features that are not fully understood or identified. So, um, so recently there was a pretty groundbreaking article on the endocannabinoid system and its optimization, which provided additional support for these conditions and various others, suggesting that the deficiency in the endocannabinoid system might underlie the nature of these disease states. And this highlights the possibility that the role of the endocannabinoid system in these disorders may have been previously overlooked, and that by addressing any endocannabinoid deficiency will lead to better outcomes for these and many other conditions. So that's your basic introduction to the endocannabinoid system, as well as what happens when we don't have adequate tone, and we don't have, or where we do have a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. So let's go back to the basic functions of the endocannabinoid system. So, as I've already mentioned, it's involved in relaxation, in sleep, in eating, in forgetting, and in protecting. And there are basically three components to the ECS. We have our endocannabinoids, which are the cannabinoids that we produce ourselves in our body. And so those two primary ones are anandamide and 2-AG. They're the ones that have had the most research, the ones you're going to hear the most about. And cannabinoids are considered ligands. They are released on demand in a retrograde fashion. So typically what usually happens is you'll get a neurotransmission or a message from one nerve to another nerve, from the presynaptic to the postsynaptic neurons, which is very different in the endocannabinoid system because it's a retrograde. So, for example, if your presynaptic neuron is telling your postsynaptic neuron to produce a lot of um, glutamate, for example, if you've had a head injury, that excessive amount of glutamate causes a secondary injury. So the endocannabinoids will see that the postsynaptic neuron is getting way too much glutamate, will go retrograde back to the presynaptic neuron and tell it to hold their horses. Too much glutamate is being released and it's causing problems. So that's a very different process for neurotransmitters. So you have your endocannabinoids, you have your receptors. So once the cannabinoids are released on demand, then you have cannabinoid receptors, very creatively called cannabinoid receptor 1 and cannabinoid receptor 2. The cannabinoid receptor 1 is primarily in your nervous system, in your brain, in your spinal cord. CB2, or cannabinoid receptor 2, is primarily found in all the rest of your cells and very concentrated in your immune system cells. So the goal of the endocannabinoid system is to maintain homeostasis. So it's communicating with every other system in the body. It knows if your GI system is out of balance, whether you've got inflammation going, which is causing diarrhea, or whether you have slow motility and it's causing constipation. That's considered an imbalance. And the endocannabinoid system's job is to go in there and regain homeostasis, and it does that by using its own endocannabinoids. Unfortunately, in today's very hectic, stressful environment for most people who daily are faced with smog, with toxins in the air, toxins in the home, incredible amounts of stress, the body cannot keep up with adequate production of these endocannabinoids. So when you take in cannabinoids from a plant, cannabis in particular, you're basically supplementing your body to give it the raw materials that it needs to get in there and, from a holistic viewpoint, bring things back into homeostasis. So you've got your cannabinoids, your receptors, and then you have the enzymes which produce and destroy the endocannabinoids. So the endocannabinoid system is also an immune system modulator, so it protects against oxidative stress as it works to suppress inflammation. So most diseases have a component of oxidative stress, of inflammation. So the endocannabinoid system is responsible for keeping all of those things at a healthy level. So now the basic functions of the endocannabinoid system is it protects the neurons in the cells against free radicals. So we have free radicals going through our body all the time, and that creates reactive oxygen species, which are detrimental to our health and well-being. So the endocannabinoid system helps to protect our nerves and our cells against those free radicals. And the oxidative stress that's formed by the production of the reactive oxygen species, or the ROS, contributes to aging, cancer, inflammation, which is associated with all diseases, neurologic disorders, and many other health disorders. Now, all of these studies that I have listed in here, feel free to go and dig deeper if there's anything of particular interest to you. Um, but this is the point of having all of these studies here is because I want people to understand that this isn't just my coming up with this information. There are a gazillion studies on cannabis and on the endocannabinoid system, more than probably most people would want to read in their lifetime, but they are there. And so I'm just kind of pointing out some good ones that you can go to. So, as I said earlier, the endocannabinoid system is our largest neurotransmitter system in the body. It operates in a retrograde fashion from the postsynaptic neuron to the presynaptic neuron. And the body creates its own endocannabinoids from substances that are found on cell membranes, which you may hear sometimes referred to as arachidonic acid derivatives. Now, the cannabinoids themselves, whether they're endocannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, or synthetic cannabinoids, are molecules or atoms which bind reversibly to a protein. So, as I mentioned early, the receptors are G protein receptors. And so that is what the cannabinoids bind with. And when it does that, the cannabinoids initiate a physiologic response when linked to a receptor. It can either stimulate something, for example, when THC binds with the CB1 receptor, it causes intoxication, it relieves nausea and vomiting, it does a number of different things. When CBD binds with the CB1 receptor, it stops THC from binding. So it doesn't actually create a response. It just stops the THC from binding. So if somebody has taken too much THC and you give them, for example, an isolate of CBD, those CBD molecules will block any more THC from hitting the receptors, causing ongoing intoxication. So, and sometimes they just are neutral. They can either stop something, start something, or just make it a neutral response. So, and as I've said, there are three forms of cannabinoid receptor ligands. We have our endocannabinoids that we produce ourselves, which are anandamide and 2-AG. We have phytocannabinoids, which are very prominent in the cannabis plant, but they're also found in other plants as well. And then we have our synthetic cannabinoids. So these are the things that are produced in the lab. Marinol, as you are probably familiar with, is often used for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. Uh, it's typically regarded as less effective because it's just one molecule. It's the THC molecule made in the lab versus if you use a cannabis tincture, you're getting a number of other compounds as well that also help not only relieve nausea, but reduce muscle tension, muscle spasm. It relieves anxiety, it relieves depression, all of these things contributing to um, specifically chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting. Cancer patients tend to have quite a bit of anxiety and depression that they are dealing with. So, so if we go in a little bit deeper about the endocannabinoids, as we know, they're produced on demand in the postsynaptic neuron and they travel backward to inhibit the release of various neurotransmitters. So, for example, in neuropathic pain and in nerve cell death, when glutamate, which is a stimulatory neurotransmitter, is at excessive concentrations, it perpetuates neuropathic pain and disease, and it provokes cell death after head injury or stroke due to excitotoxicity and excessive stimulation. So, if your body just keeps producing glutamate after a head injury or a stroke, your condition is just going to keep deteriorating. So, the endocannabinoid's job is to go from the postsynaptic, where it knows it's getting too much glutamate, goes to the presynaptic and says, hold on, stop sending over so much glutamate, and then that's what happens, and that actually protects the brain. Um, and endocannabinoids are naturally secreted after stroke and head injury for that particular reason, to inhibit the glutamate excessive release, as well as alleviating neuropathic pain and cell death. So, if we go into a little bit more detail about the two different endocannabinoids that we have, as I said, it's anandamide and 2-AG. So, anandamide is also known as AEA, was the first endogenous cannabinoid to be identified as a natural ligand for the CB1 receptor. And it's a partial agonist, meaning it only does partially, it's not a full agonist that has um, a complete response. And it is relatively inactive in the CB2. So it has a much higher affinity for the CB1 receptors, and anandamide and THC are almost identical molecularly. Uh, and it, as I said, it's a partial agonist at CB1 and inactive at CB2. In the central nervous system, anandamide modulates pain, memory, learning, and anxiety. In the cardiovascular system, anandamide induces bradycardia, hypotension. It acts as a cardiovascular regulatory agent against atherosclerosis, ischemia, reperfusion, and blood pressure regulation. In pathological conditions, anandamide is associated with excessive vasodilation, such as migraine, inflammation, hemorrhagic, and septic shock, and the anandamide levels in the blood are elevated. It's an important anti-inflammatory, and it has anti-cancer properties both in vivo and in vitro in animal models. It is an anabolic regulator of metabolism in that it increases the intake of food, it promotes the storage of lipids, and decreases the expenditure of energy. It's also involved in the regulation of body temperature, locomotion, feeding, and anxiety. And there are suggestions that modulation of anandamide levels in the gut has potential for treatment of inflammatory bowel disease and colon cancer. Anandamide has been found to be present in the reproductive fluids of both males and females, and it's believed to be important in the reproduction in relation to both the production of sperm and female fertility and pregnancy. Macrophages generate anandamide in response to the presence of bacterial endotoxin, and it's involved in the pathology of septic shock and cirrhosis of the liver. And anandamide is derived from macrophages that have, and it has anti-inflammatory effects both in the peripheral and the central nervous system. And it can induce apoptosis in many cell types, which is very important, especially in anti-cancer uses of cannabis. So then our second one is 2-AG, or 2-arachidonoglycerol, but everybody just calls it 2-AG. And it's a full agonist at both CB1 and CB2, and it's considered the principal ligand for both receptors. So in the brain, its levels are 1,000 times higher than anandamide, and it's considered the primary CB1 ligand for the brain and the central nervous system. It modulates immune function, cell proliferation, neuroprotection, neuromodulation, cardiovascular function, inflammatory response, food intake, energy metabolism, motor activity, learning, memory, pain sensation, regulation of body temperature, stress, anxiety, addictive behavior, and embryo development. So yes, this is a very important endocannabinoid, and it's really good when it's in the proper amounts. So 2-AG also exerts anti-cancer activities by inhibiting the proliferation, migration, and or invasion of cancer cells and tumor angiogenesis. So basically, in cancer, cancer is so devastating because it grows really fast, it spreads, its normal mechanisms of committing suicide or apoptosis is impaired. It switches on our ID1 gene, which creates that really aggressive forms of different kinds of cancer. And when cancer can produce its own blood vessels to feed its tumor, that tumor just grows. Well, cannabis, as well as these endocannabinoids, are they're anti-angiogenic genesis, whatever it is, but it stops the ability of the tumor to create all of these blood vessels to feed it. So it has some extremely important activities in both our health and wellness. So 2-AG is responsible for the regulation of food intake and energy metabolism. Increased levels were found during fasting. It's important in modulating anxiety and depressive behaviors and in addiction. So a lot of people say, oh, and this, like I said, 2-AG and anandamide are molecularly basically identical to THC and CBD. And there's the old, misinformation that cannabis leads to greater addiction. If anything, it stops addiction, and they're using it now to help people get off of opioid addictions, benzodiazepine addictions, etc. It has the exact opposite effect than what they say. And so it plays a key role in the regulation of numerous neuroinflammatory processes in the brain. Anandamide may act similarly, but at much lower levels. So neuroinflammatory processes are involved in PTSD and strokes, in seizure disorders, in essential tremor. Anytime where you have either a neurodegenerative process going on or an inflammatory process going on in the brain because the brain isn't able to get rid of all the toxins. 2-AG can come in there and help to regulate that. And it's involved as a mediator of inflammatory reactions and immune responses in many other tissues, and it can reduce the effects of pain. So, in immune cells, such as platelets and macrophages, this lipid is produced in response to injury, and its production is thought to be a beneficial response aimed at decreasing pro-inflammatory mediators as well as ameliorating some neurodegenerative diseases. So basically what that means is if you have pro-inflammatory mediators such as cytokine, okay, so everybody knows with the COVID-19, the cytokine storm, which is a pro-inflammatory mediator, was very detrimental and was kind of one of the main risk factors for death. If there was a cytokine storm it just overwhelms the body. So these endocannabinoids can come in there and decrease those pro-inflammatory mediators, not only to protect the brain, but also any other process that's going on where your immune system is kind of running amok. So these are all very, very important processes, and having a good balance and not having a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, knowing how to address any kind of deficiency, whether it's being identified because you have migraines or irritable bowel or phantom limb pain or PTSD or whatever the condition is that's manifesting the fact that you have a deficiency in your endocannabinoid tone, um, helps the cannabis consultant or the cannabis clinician to get in there and know how to address those deficiencies by most often using cannabis. So even though there are two primary endocannabinoids in our body, we have more than 140 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. And the cannabis plant interacts directly with our endocannabinoid system, which I said at the beginning is why cannabis is so effective for so many different disorders. And it is responsible for some of the most important processes required for us to heal our body, to prevent disease, and to reduce the sequela, the negative effects of certain injuries, such as brain injuries or strokes, etc. So this is a very important system, and my goal is to get every clinician who's willing to spend an hour with me to know about this so that they can employ this very important information when they're working with their clients, um, to help them achieve their optimal health levels possible. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Next week, we are going to talk more about clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, specifically in migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, and fibromyalgia. So that will shed a little bit more light on how the endocannabinoid system affects these three primary disease states or conditions. So let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, Candy's here. Hello, Candy. And feel free to unmute. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Oh, my pleasure.
That was nice of you to go through the hoops to help me get on here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry it was so
Yeah.
convoluted or something, but I'm glad you made it.
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of questions.
Right.
Because I'm in the organic supplement line, right? And I'm wondering if how would that complement it, or would there be interactions to it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. And it does complement it very well because
Mhm.
most of the supplements out on the market, unless they are hemp, don't do what cannabinoids do. So it is very complementary. You should consider the interactions. Generally speaking, if you separate the intake of your supplements 2 hours from the intake of your cannabinoids, there's no problem.
Okay.
Or if that isn't feasible, you can go on Medscape, which is an app, and
Mhm.
there's a button called Interaction Checker, and you can just list all prescription meds, supplements, and put in marijuana. Don't put in cannabis. They're back in the 1970s. Um,
No.
they refer to it as marijuana, which is kind of a derogatory,
Yeah,
for medical people, it's considered derogatory to call this very important medicine marijuana. It's
I
called
know.
cannabis. That's the biological name for it. But anyway, go on Medscape. You can list,
Okay.
whatever other supplements you're taking or your client is taking. And in fact, one of my other students works for a supplement company, and she's learning how to become a cannabis consultant, and she's going to marry the two. So it's very
Very
complementary.
good. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, sorry to take up so much
No,
time, Sherry,
that's fine.
but I was curious to your opinion on, because it does so many wonderful things, helping so many different, problems in the body. Do you think eventually the doctors and pharmaceutical industries will welcome it instead of fight it, because it's healing where they don't want that. They want to put people on drugs, and the doctors won't support this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunately the situation. In an ideal world, you would think that, the medical establishment, including pharma, including doctors, including specialists, surgeons, everybody would put the patient's best interests before everything else, but realistically that's just not the case. Pharmaceutical industries have their shareholders that they have to appease. Doctors have to make a living. There are all of these
That's true.
conflicting. Mhm.
Especially when it comes to cancer, when people suffer so much with the cancer, and this can really help reverse and slow it. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah,
Oh.
so it sounds like you're pretty familiar with cannabis. Have you used it before, or do you
I've
know of
used
people
it
who have?
as a young adult, a young
Uh,
hippie.
but for medical use, have you used it
No,
with your
not at all.
clients?
Not at all.
No?
And we've got over 300 products in our line that is all the organic and non-GMO and this and that. And we're going to conference next week. So there's all kinds of rumors and hubbubs about something really fantastic that they're going to launch, and everyone's so excited, but I have no clue. So we'll find out, and I'm hoping that I can just continue to learn from you. I thought that was an excellent presentation, and I
Oh,
want to come back next week and then see where that leads us. That'd be,
perfect.
yeah.
Yes, yes, that would be great. So next week it's going to be on Thursday at 3 o'clock. I move it around a little bit because
Oh,
more people can fit it into their
yes.
schedule.
That'd be
So,
great. All right.
yeah.
And then
And
I would go on to Alignable to register for your webinar. I
yeah,
don't,
yeah, you can do that. If you go to my group called Heart of Healing,
yes.
and then I pin it usually at the very top, the invitation and the announcement for the next week. I haven't done it for this week, but it's always the same link. So if you just keep the link I gave you, it's going to be good for all of
Okay,
them.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Yes.
so glad you came, Candy.
Yes, thank you. It's great to get to know you. And I'm looking to still having a one-on-one Zoom eventually sometime mid August or something,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. As soon as we
All right.
can, that'd be great. And this
Okay.
is Sherry.
Hi,
Sherry
Sherry.
is another nurse. So Sherry, I've known since, oh my God, what was it, 2000? Like we've known, it's amazing. We've known each other for a very long time. And
Great.
we used to work together. And
Ah,
then, we both kind of went our separate ways, and now we're kind of coming back together. And it's been a lot of fun. So she's
well,
on Alignable too as well.
I'm in Tampa, Florida. I
Mhm.
relocated from Chicago, so I see down here in Tampa a CBD shop at every corner now, and I think it would be a good idea for me to introduce them to you so that these
Oh,
people, the shop owners, probably don't really understand the full benefits. That's they need
yeah.
to understand more.
Yeah, and my public service announcement that I do anytime people bring up different products in CBD, they are not all created equal, and
Yeah.
some of them are actually harmful. So make sure whatever products that you use that are over the counter have lab results. And you just need to go on their website. If they're a reputable medical grade company, they will say we have third party lab results and it's very easy to review them. If it's a company that's just in it for the money, and they aren't creating a great product. They don't want somebody else to analyze it. And so you shouldn't be taking it as medicine.
I agree.
I was just channeling you for that exact comment. So on Alignable twice today, I mentioned the endocannabinoid system, and I actually went on and said, okay, in reference to my post, here's the link to this particular meeting. But one of them said, "Oh, I purchased CBD on Amazon," and I was like, "Okay, how do I do this nicely?"
Right.
But there are reputable companies out there, but they're very hard to pick out with all
Mhm.
of the non-reputable companies out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to be really careful.
Yeah, you really do because hemp as a plant, hemp and cannabis are basically the same plant. It's known to be a bioaccumulator. So, for example, in Chernobyl years ago, when they had the nuclear reactor disaster, they planted hemp because there were so many toxins in the soil, so many heavy metals from that atomic accident, and the hemp just sucks all that bad stuff into it, and then
Oh,
they chop it down and then they do another crop. It cleans the soil. So if
nice.
somebody, an unreputable company, is using plant material that has heavy metals or pesticides or toxins such as bacterias, molds, etc., and you're taking that as your medicine, it's actually going to hurt you.
Yeah, do
So
more harm than good. Yeah.
yeah. So
That's
tell all
why
your friends, make sure they know not to get those bad products.
that's why I feel so strongly about Shaklee, who I represent, because they do so much clinical studies. They guarantee, and then they'll show you the clinicals so that you know it's pure and you're not getting any toxins or preservatives. But what I don't understand is those shops, the hemp shops have all these different flavors. I mean, the
Hmm.
flavors and colorings are, they can't be good for you, you know.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Yeah.
seem medicinal to me.
Right. Right. Yeah. So some of the products that I use in my practice, because I work with medical patients, I think you know that, but um, the uh, the flavoring is primarily from terpenes. So terpenes are essential oils that are naturally found in the plant. And
Hmm.
they can be peppery, they can be lemony, they can be like lavender. Um, so as long as whatever they're using to flavor is a natural,
Natural oil, yeah.
which is going to be more expensive, which these fly by night companies aren't going to bother doing.
Right.
So once again, you really just need to know what you're taking. It's your medicine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Well, this was great. Sherry, did you have any questions or anything?
A comment as you were talking, and so the whole endocannabinoid system and there's something called the endocannabinoid biome, which incorporates the rest of the body, Candy. It starts triggering from the stomach and through the rest of your system. And it all comes together to create a really big chemical combination in our bodies that switches processes on and off, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of when we first started talking about metabolic syndrome and nobody wanted to talk about it. And so, I don't know, 20 some years ago, there was this thing called metabolic syndrome, and doctors did not believe in it at all. Come to find out, it's actually a condition. We started calling it metabolic syndrome, and now it's prediabetes, and we're actually treating it. But it's the same exact thing. Like you can just like I can see that train coming down, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because doctors didn't want to believe it, and it took 20 years, and now they're finally like the ADA had to go out and prove that yes, you can do something in that pre-diabetes state to prevent it from getting worse. Right? You can start by controlling your blood pressure and controlling your cholesterol, and that will prevent things from getting worse for a period of time. And I just feel like we're back there again, back in this fight with these doctors.
At my age, I've seen too many people suffer through and pass away from Parkinson's and things like that could have totally been, reversed or slowed or something, so and relieved of pain for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, doctors, I don't know where along the way they lost their science.
Yes.
They're supposed to be scientists that are open-minded and want to explore and see other things and look for other solutions. And somehow that got lost.
No time. 15,
and they're
20
now
minutes.
rigid.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I have it just breaks my heart when I have customers that say to me, well, I've got to check with my doctor first. And then of course their doctors are so limited and closed-minded.
Yeah, they think supplements are a big waste of time.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, our food supply sucks.
They're poisoning it too.
Yeah. So where are we supposed to get all these nutrients if we're not getting it in our foods? And I'm not saying just buy any over-the-counter supplement because they're the same as any over-the-counter hemp product. You don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But, like your company and like Designs for Health, the companies that cater to the prescribers are going to be the ones that have the studies that back it up and the lab results that show exactly what's in there, because that's the medical standard.
Right. I feel confident that because I can give out the MSDS sheets on things, or if they ask me for clinical proof, I could send them to medical affairs and they will answer their questions, so give them information. Where you buy a bottle of vitamins on the drugstore shelf, you're not going to get any information, even calling an 800 number,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all doing very important work. So please spread the word.
Yes.
So that more people know this is available to them.
Yeah, we've got to support each other here too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My grandson's here. I'm going to get going. Okay.
Okay, Candy.
Thank you so much.
Hi, buddy.
Say hi, Nurse Susan. That's Jameson and Sherry.
Hi, Jameson.
Sherry.
Hi.
Hi. Well, you guys have a lot of fun tonight, whatever you do.
Yeah, we are. We're going to have dinner.
Yum.
Oh, late. Oh, you already ate dinner, right? Okay, we'll have popcorn then.
Sounds like my kind of dinner. Either that or cereal. I'm perfectly happy.
All right, nice to see you, Sherry. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Bye, Candy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait.
Can I show you my other one? Here.
Yes, of course.
Hi, too.
Oh, hi.
Stand up.
Hello, hello.
There.
What's your name?
Jade.
Play with these, Bacha.
Jane. Hi, Jane.
Okay, we'll see you later.
You're a lucky lady, Candy.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So are you good, Sherry? Is everything?
I am good. We probably should just say we do love all practitioners. It doesn't matter. And some practitioners know about us, not all our practitioners. Sorry. Just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, right. It's not all of them, some of them, but hopefully more will know. That's the goal. Yeah.
Well, I'm all good. So have a good night.
Great. Thanks. You too. And I guess I'll see you next week.
Next week.
Okay. Have a good weekend. Bye.